This video is going to focus on problems that involve units of measure that measure area and volume. And while some of these problems are just some basic unit conversions, I wanted to keep them separate from our other unit conversions so we could sort of visualize what is an area unit and what is a volume unit, because those do have sort of, you can sort of see them, and it helps when dealing with some of the application problems we're going to do with these conversions. So let's start with an area unit. So we want to visualize what 1 square foot is. 1 square foot. So we can either write it out 1 square foot like this, or you might sometimes see it written 1 and then FT with a little square next to it. Either of those is an acceptable notation. Well, when someone says something measures, or they're measuring something in square feet, it literally, the unit is a square. So imagine a measuring tool like a ruler that's a little square where each side of it is 1 foot long. You know, each side of my square is 1 foot, and if I found the area of this figure, it would be 1 times 1, or 1 square foot. So thinking about it like this really helps us when we're dealing with unit conversions. So let's say I want to take square feet, and I want to figure out what does that measure in square inches. That's my question for today. Well, I actually think about, well, 1 foot is equal to 12 inches. And so each of the side lengths of this square, I could think of each of them as 12 inches long. That would be the same as 1 foot. And that's a measure I'm pretty comfortable with. Well, but I'm not looking at a length measure, I'm looking at an area. And if I found the area of this square in inches, that would be 12 times 12, or 144 square inches. And so that's one way to visualize what's happening when we deal with area units. We can actually tackle a similar thing when we're looking at volume units. So if I'm looking at volume units for a minute, I'm going to change to a slightly different color. When I measure something in, let's say 1 cubic meter. So again, I could write it this way. I could also write it 1 with a little m, and this time I'd get a little 3 in the corner. And a cubic meter is literally a cube. And so a cube is a 3-dimensional shape where all 6 sides are squares. And so here's my cubic meter. And what that tells me is each side length here is 1 meter long. So if I found the volume of this cube in meters, it would be 1 times 1 times 1, or 1 cubic meter. Again, just like with the square feet to square inches, thinking about cubic meters, and let's say we wanted to convert our cubic meters into cubic centimeters, it helps to think about, well, each of those 1 meter side lengths has 100 centimeters in it. And so if I wanted to find this same volume measure, but instead of in meters, in my centimeters, well, that would just be 100 times 100 times 100, which would be 1 million, or 100 cubed. Think of it as 100 cubed, or 1 million, 1 with 6 zeros following it. Cubic centimeters. I like to always go back to what does it mean, but just like with our length measures, these units of measures do exist in our unit calculator. So we're going to switch over to that really quickly and take a look at some other conversions that maybe I can't visualize quite as easy. So let's go back to our conversion calculator, and we're going to go to area. We're going to go back to area for a moment, because there is a common area unit that we see a lot in when we're dealing with properties, and that's the measure of acres. So an acre is a unit of measure that measures area. And so often some people will convert acres into square miles. you know, just to sort of, that would be a common switch between. And so let's say I wanted to convert 100 acres into square miles. You'll notice that 100 acres is less than 1 square mile. It's only 0.156 square miles. So that's not a lot. It's a very, very small amount. But just to sort of go back, this does have all the other sort of units in it. So like if I'd wanted to go from the square feet to square inch, you'll notice those are in this calculator. Square meters, square kilometers. Just sometimes it's helpful to be able to think about when we're talking about square inches. It is literally a square unit of measure. We're looking at how much space it takes up. Volume is similar. So notice cubic meter right here, and I could convert to cubic centimeters just like I did. You know, here's my, 1 cubic meter is 1 million cubic centimeters. But this time we're actually going to go from cubic inches into liters. Liters is a volume measure. Often, if we're dealing with liquid measures, you're going to be told I need a certain number of liters of something. But if I'm measuring the volume of an object, myself personally, I'm probably going to have it measured in something like cubic inches or cubic feet. And so I want to be able to convert between that something like cubic feet and turn it into something like liters or gallons. So in this case, we want to take 385 cubic inches. So let's find cubic inches. There it is down at the very bottom. And we want to turn it into liters. And that's right here. And so 385 cubic inches is equal to about 6.3 liters. Now that we sort of have an overview of some area and volume conversions, we're going to look at 3 different application problems with these and how sort of we can tackle some problems like that. I will also be flipping to, while doing those problems, I will also be using a Desmos calculator. These are online calculators that everyone has access to for free. They're also apps for your phone. So this screen is an example of the Desmos graphing calculator, though you can still do basic computations in it. And then the other one that I will use is the Desmos scientific calculator. For the most part in this class, this one's going to be good enough. It does your basic operations. It does exponents, you know, it does square roots. So this one's good enough to get by. And so I would, if you don't have a handheld graphing calculator, I would strongly recommend that you use these. They're free, which is always a great number. And I personally like using them over my handheld calculator. So just so you know, when I'm using calculators, I will be using these. And so sometimes I will go back and show you what I'm doing in them. Okay, so let's go to our situation problems. The first one we're going to look at, this one actually is going to tie closely in with our geometry project. So we're going to be looking at the area of a room and then figuring out how much it would cost to carpet the room, which is something you'll need to be able to do in our geometry project. So in this case, we're given a room measure. It's 11.75 by 17.25. And you'll notice this little weird tick mark there. That is another way to symbolize feet. When you see the double mark, that's another way to symbolize inches. And that's just common knowledge that you should tuck away in the back of your brain. All right, so we want to carpet a bedroom. Those are the dimensions of the bedroom. If it's giving us a length and a width, we're going to assume rectangular. We want to find the cost of the carpet, and we are given this cost $11.49 per square yard and some sales tax. Ooh, a percent. So we're going to talk a little bit about percents again. All right, so let's start by, I always like to start by drawing myself a picture. I'm a picture person. So here we have 17.25 feet by 11.75 feet. Now, if I find the area of this, I'm going to get an area measure in square feet. But looking ahead a little, I notice, and I'm going to highlight it right here, that my cost is given to me in square yards. So I have a choice here. I can either find the area and then convert after I have found the area, or I can convert first and then find the area in square yards. The choice is really up to you and what you're more comfortable dealing with. I'm going to try to show you both methods, and that way you sort of get a sense of what you would prefer. All right, so if we're dealing with the convert after, so we're going to call this the convert second method. What I would do is I would start by finding the area. And the area would be 17.25 times 11.75. And I already put this in my calculator. That would come out to 202.6875 square feet. All right, but I don't want square feet, I need square yards. So this is where we might go to our unit converter calculator. Oops. And so if I go back over here, I want to go from I'm in volume, I need to be in area. So I want to go from square feet into square yards. And I am going to put in as many decimals as I can, because the earlier you round, the more off your answer is going to be. And I get this 22.5208 square yards. So I found the area first, and then I converted. And the reason this conversion happened was because basically in 1 square yard is equal to 9 square feet. And so if you divide that square feet measure by 9, you would end up with your square yard measures. So that's if you convert second. The other option was to convert first. And so I'm going to do that one in purple. So if you convert first, basically I'm going to turn both of my dimensions into yards. Well, there are 3 feet in 1 yard. And so basically if I divide each of these numbers by 3, I'm going to get their measure in yards. And this is one where I'm going to sort of put it all in my calculator at once, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So one dimension would be 11.75 divided by 3, and the other dimension would be 17.25 divided by 3. And if I want to find their area, I'm going to multiply them. And so I can quickly go over, let's say I want to go over to my scientific calculator, and I'm going to put in my 11.75 divided by 3. Oops. I need to delete there. And then times that by my 17.25 divided by 3. And you'll notice, ta-da, the 25.5208, the same number we got going the other way. And so it didn't really matter if we converted first or we converted second. It's sort of what are you comfortable with, but at some point we needed to convert. Now, we haven't actually answered the question. We just found the area in square yards. We still need to figure out how much it costs. So we're given a unit rate here. We're given, and I'm going to use blue for the cost. We're given that $11.49 per square yard. Well, what that means is for each of those 22.5 square yards, it's going to cost $11.49. And that's going to give me the rate without tax. So it's sort of like, the initial price and then tax is figured in. Just think about the bottom of a receipt. So we're going to start there. So we're going to just label this cost. And we have 22.5208, and we're going to times that by our sort of unit rate. And when we multiply those two numbers together, we get $258.76. Now, that's the cost pre-tax. So there's some options then when you deal with tax. So basically, you're going to add in 8.6% of that amount into the new total. But what I like to think about is your total cost when we're dealing with taxes is going to be equal to the 100% we started with plus my tax rate, that 8.6%. So the reality is that I need 108.6% of my original sort of raw price. Well, thinking back to a previous problem where we dealt with percents, a percent is out of 100, so 108.6 out of 100 times the 258.76, and we would get our total cost of $281.02. So that's one option with tax. The other option would be to figure out 8.6% of that value and then add it back into the original cost, which is sort of what our receipts show. I'm showing a different strategy. We'll do another tax problem at a point, and I'll maybe do it the other way so you get a sort of sense of both. So here's a problem where we use some area units. We then had to use the area, convert, find a cost in one particular application. Another one's a little more simple. We have some dimensions for a piece of property, and we want to find the measure of the property in square yards and in acres. So just a quick woohoo, we have 0.6 miles by 0.9 miles. And in a problem like this where I'm not going further, I'm going to just convert second. And so I'm going to find the area first. So area would be 0.9 times 0.6, which would be 0.5 for square miles. And so now I'm just going to go over to my unit converter calculators for the next two. So go over here, we're dealing with area. We're starting with square miles. So we had 0.54, and that would be 1,672,705.22 square yards. And then if I wanted to convert that into acres, that's about 345.6 acres. So a little bit of, I'm using some of the area from lesson 1 and then doing a little bit of unit conversions. All right, last but not least, we're going to look at some volume. All right, we have an Olympic-sized swimming pool, and in that Olympic-sized swimming pool, it would have to be 50 meters long by 25 meters wide by 3 meters deep, and I want to know how many liters of water are needed to fill the pool. And for the sake of this problem, we're going to just assume that the pool is filled all the way to the top. I know swimming pools are not, but we're not given any more information than that. And just like with the other problems, my first step is draw and label a diagram. You're going to be so tired of Professor Rosetta drawing way too many diagrams in all her videos. So we have 3 meters deep, 25 meters, and 50 meters. And no, my diagram is by no means drawn to scale. So yes, we're going to find the volume first. And we're doing volume first because we're going to liters. So that's not something I can really convert up front since that liters is a pure volume unit. So the volume in cubic meters here would be 3,750 cubic meters. And now, again, just like with some previous problems, I want to convert it into liters. I'm going to go over to my unit converter calculator, go to volume. So I'm going to have, I want to go from cubic meters to liters. And we had 3,750 liters. And so that would be a grand total of 3,750,000 liters of water. That is a lot. Hopefully with these problems, you get a sense of how we use volume and area unit conversions within some application problems and what those units look like.